Okay, our first session, it's entitled, It's the Existing Fleet That Will Make Shipping Meet the Decarbonisation Deadlines. Like I said earlier on this morning, Standard Chartered and Marine Money, we did this survey. One of the questions was, if you are going to invest during 2024, what kind of vessels are they going to be? Like new buildings, second-hand, or retrofits, or whatever. It was pretty fairly mixed, I would say, about how they intend to invest, but a big chunk of the responses were retrofits. So it's definitely something on people's minds, and people are looking to upgrade their existing vessels. A couple of changes to the lineup. Charis from Starbulk, unfortunately, is unable to be here because she's doing extensive traveling. And we have Christian Rychly from MPC Container Ships replacing his colleague Konstantin. As well as that, we have Lise Duetoft, who is Chief Strategy and Analytics Officer with Höegh Autoliners AS. And we have Antoniou, Founder and Managing Director of Neptune Maritime Leasing. Our moderator, of course, is Nick Brown, Corporate Affairs Director, Marine and Offshore with Bureau Veritas. Nick, please.
Kevin, thank you very much. Welcome back from lunch, everyone, for those of you back. Great to be here. Kevin, Mia, thank you for organizing this. And super to be with the panel today. Yes, we are short of Harris Plakontonakis. You'll have seen the news about Starbulk and Eagle Bulk. I think she's tied up with that. So it's a pity not to have the insight of a bulk carrier operator, but I think we're going to do really well here today. Obviously, we've got the biggest fleet in history on the water, and it needs to decarbonize. With the targets we've got, that needs to start happening fast. Is it happening? I think talking to some of the senior research power in the room earlier, they're skeptical in a lot of markets, definitely in container ships, and where the owners and charterers are talking about this and getting things done, but maybe less so in dry cargo, for example. But can we challenge that? Lise, what's happening in the market at the moment? How do you see the opportunity to retrofit and decarbonize the existing fleet, and what plans do you have to retrofit or refit your ships?
Well, for Höegh Autoliners, which is a car carrier, we do not think that the existing fleet will deliver the decarbonization goals that has been set. So we have taken a very active position in fleet renewal. We do not think that retrofitting efficiency programs will move the needle sufficiently. Our goal is to reduce emissions between 2019 and 2030 by 30% and reach net zero by 2040. And we're not going to get there with the existing fleet. So we have invested in a new build program of 12 ammonia-ready car carriers, and we're working very hard to be the first car carrier to have an ammonia ship on the water in 2027. Now, in between that target date, we're also using biofuels. We will use LNG, and we're increasingly interested in bio-LNG as well as an interesting transition fuel. So in our view, if the industry is going to get there, we need low carbon fuels now and investment in new green fuel capacity.
Okay, thanks. And perhaps a bit later we can get into some of the details on how you're going to approach ammonia, because I understand there'll be a retrofit planned for some of the early ships on order. Christian, how do you see it at the moment? Have you been retrofitting your ships to make them more efficient, and is that going to be a big plan in the run-up to 2030?
Absolutely. But talking here about MPC container ships and being container ship owner, that's a bit of a difference to car carriers. Actually, retrofitting will help you quite a bit. It will not be enough to achieve 2030 goals, and that's why I can only echo what Lise has just said. We are also ordering new buildings, and we are very active on that one, but retrofitting is, at least for now, a very, very important first step. We are doing a lot there, and it starts with small things like LED lighting, but we do new bulbous bows, we do propeller retrofits, And on some of the container ship designs, you can easily achieve significant savings, which is a significant difference to what we have today. And I think also what has changed with these discussions together with our charterers, that we are having a lot more active dialogue than what we used to have with the container liners, because it's a mutual effort. We do it together, so we are co-investing in retrofits, we are sharing the benefits from that, and it's for the relationship with our charterers and the discussions which we have, that's very, very beneficial.
Okay, thank you. And are you comfortable with the data you're seeing, that you're seeing a real return on investment for the
Absolutely,
for the changes you're making?
It depends on the ship type, and on the exact design. And some ships, in all honesty, we had to sell because we really struggle to see that they are going to be compliant with the increasing regulation over the next couple of years. But if you are looking at an average feeder container ship and you change the bulbous bow, the propeller, maybe add back a twisted fin, you can easily achieve 20–25%, and that is a lot for looking ahead now. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. And Harris, you've got a diversified fleet, average age 11 years. How are you seeing this opportunity to reduce the impact of your existing fleet?
Well, to start with, we are a shipping lessor. So actually, we're not in control of the decisions in relation to the vessels, their efficiency. These are the owners and operators. However, you cannot change what you cannot measure. So this year we started measuring. We produced our first ESG report for Neptune Maritime Leasing. And we're pleased to see that gradually what used to be, the odd one, it's becoming a rule, in a sense that everybody, all our clients, are spending more time in looking at the decarbonization and other ESG credentials. And we think that retrofitting is definitely a step that we all need to take in order to move to the right direction and reduce the footprint and the impact that shipping has on the environment. Actually, if you look at some of the statistics, and somebody mentioned this earlier, we're looking at the average age of the fleet, which is increasing. It's now 12.6 years, whereas in 2013 was 9.3. So we see that as an interesting impact. And 32% of that fleet is above 15 years of age. So those vessels that are above 15 years of age, that represent a large number of the existing fleet, they're not going to disappear. And actually, they cannot disappear because they also produce transportation work, which means that we're going to have different type of problems next to the geopolitical disturbances that we have lately. And in fact, 30% of the fleet today will be D or E in terms of CII if they were to be measured, and that number is going to increase to 45% by 2026 if no measures are taken to improve their performance. Can you hear me? Sorry. So that means actually that if you have more or less half your fleet non-compliant by 2026, the only solution is to do retrofits. And we encourage our clients taking steps and measures to improve the environmental footprint of their operations. And as the speakers here next to me mentioned, we look at retrofits, anything from fins to propellers to hull cleaning, anti-foul systems, that all work incrementally. So if you change a bulbous bow, if you add a cap to your propeller, etc., then you end up at savings that could go as much as 20% or more, which I think is a necessary first step to get to where we want to be.
And do you think owners are taking advantage of that as fast as they can at the moment?
We see increasing attention. We have owners that, in fact, changed the strategy to actually take advantage of the price differential between very efficient ships that are more expensive, eco ships that are more expensive, and less efficient ships that are much cheaper, but with the right retrofits could actually extend the lifespan beyond what was previously possible and available. So yes, we see that, and of course we help them in terms of financing to achieve their goals.
Okay, fantastic, thanks. Lise, you mentioned your new building program. I understand that the first 8 ships will need to be retrofitted later. Can you tell us some more about that? You know, you've designed in a requirement to retrofit the ships to ammonia-fueled engines when those engines become available. How's that going to work?
Well, we designed the ships with fuel flexibility in mind, because I don't think anyone can truly predict how the energy transition will play out and which fuel will become the most suitable for maritime purposes. But we've specifically designed the ships so that they are ammonia ready in terms of stronger decks, in terms of space for tanks, in terms of ventilations and so forth, such that the retrofitting of ammonia is going to be much easier. I think when we talk about retrofitting, there is minor retrofitting, such as the bulbs and the turbochargers and the shore power, and then the big retrofitting is changing propulsion, changing engine. Methanol is probably easier, but it is our view that methanol is going to be expensive, and therefore we've taken, call it a strategic bet, on ammonia being a more suitable maritime fuel. And as mentioned, it is our very clear goal to be able to launch a ship running on ammonia in 2027. So the last 4 of the 12 ships we've ordered, we very much hope to launch on ammonia straight away, and then the first 8 will be retrofitted thereafter.
Okay, and that's really interesting. So do you, I mean, given that we're in a ship finance conference, can you address a lot of those those anticipated retrofitting or refit costs up front in your initial capital allocation for the new ships? Or is that a secret?
I think what we can say is that we've taken a lot of the cost up front, in the sense that the retrofit cost will be the engine more than having to strengthen decks, change ventilation and so forth. So those costs have been covered already.
Okay, thanks. But those ships will burn LNG from delivery, is that right? Or be able to burn methane from delivery?
So the first 8 vessels will be installed with a dual fuel engine, diesel and LNG, but with the capability of being converted to ammonia or methanol if that becomes more relevant. Yeah. And then it's our goal to go straight to ammonia with the last vessel 8 to 12. Okay.
Thanks. Christian, could you anticipate such a program, appealing to your investors?
Absolutely, but we have already made a decision here, and not a ready concept, but we have ordered, and we didn't want to wait for the final fuel decision, because we think that there will be a mix of different fuels. And 2 years ago, we already ordered the first real methanol dual fuel ships. They will already be delivered this year. And together with our charterers, we have actually already bought the first batches of green methanol. So these ships will truly be carbon neutral. They will operate in carbon neutral by the end of this year. And yes, it is expensive, but that's probably one of the things where container ships, car carriers, maybe some cruise ships have an advantage, because there is this very, very high predictability of the trade routes. We know exactly where these ships will be operating. We know where the fuel needs to be bunkered. So all of that in sort of a green corridor can already be established, or is already established. And methanol, in our view, is the only option which is available today to actually facilitate carbon neutral transportation. And that's why we will also do more. We have just ordered more, and they will be delivered in 2026. But going forward from here, I think if you are a container ship owner, as we are, and you can do that together with your charterers, which we did, it's not so much uncertainty there. It's an opportunity for us. We do have significantly longer charters, which actually de-risk the investment. And waiting is for us not the real option. Yes, I agree that ammonia will potentially be not as expensive in the future, and we are also working on an ammonia project as we speak. But the reality is also that these ships will not be delivered before 2027, 2028. And that's why we have also used the methanol route, because it can be done today. and waiting is, as I said before, not really the option for us at the moment.
But there's definitely a sense the industry is just not going to be able to retrofit or change fast enough to start to get on the sort of pathway that, you know, most agree now, I think, is required. You know, what's the bridge? I mean, biofuels clearly are one option. Will there be enough of them?
I think on the container ship side, you see that there is increasing pressure by, on one side, by the regulation, obviously. The first methanol ships will be trading in Europe, so they're not only exposed to CII and other things, but also to ETS. But also, you have a lot more demand now, especially this year and the end of last year, by the shippers themselves. A few of you may be aware that COSEF, which is a coalition of shippers for zero-emission vessels, have a tender out. They are essentially purchasing 250,000 TEU in carbon-neutral transportation. It's backed by very, very big organizations like Unilever, Amazon, etc. And so if you have the ships and you are able to provide carbon-neutral transportation, then that's definitely an advantage, and you can make use of it today. Yes, there are other things, biofuels, you mentioned that as a drop-in fuel, that's absolutely fine at the moment. It's under the regulation that is accepted. We're using that also on some of the ships, but reaching all the goals for our industry is probably not going to be enough. We have also, as the group, as MPC Group, we have also invested in a synthetic diesel producer in Germany called Ineratec, because on the methanol ships we still need a pilot fuel, which is around 10% of what you need there. And we will also receive the first batch this year, by the end of this year. It's very expensive, I completely agree to that. But you know, if you're looking at a container and 10,000 pair of jeans fit in one container, and at the end the price of a single pair of jeans for transportation increases by 1 or 2 cents, I think that it's manageable. And it is also a message which is more and more echoed by shippers and by end users.
Okay, thanks. Harris, you know, when you look at the opportunities available to you today, what kind of ships are you going to be acquiring in the future? What profile do they need to have? Are you concerned, are your investors concerned about the ESG profile?
First of all, you know, if you look at the order book today, more or less half of it is dual fuel capable across all segments, and probably many more container ships and LNG or LPG carriers than dry bulk carriers. But nevertheless, it's approximately 50%. The majority of it is LNG capable, and some of it, I think, around between 8 to 10% is methanol capable. Less so in ammonia, although we've seen a lot of orders for ammonia carriers lately. So we see that, you know, the change is taking place, is happening, despite the fact that the costs are somewhat higher. And I think a number of measures assist to that extent, you know, related to obviously, you know, CII regulation, but also the EU ETS, which is, you know, forcing people to think harder about the impact on the environment and the cost of actually not complying with lower emissions. So obviously we're happy to engage with clients that, you know, want to build, you know, more efficient ships or buy dual fuel capable vessels. But, you know, I don't think we can get from A to Z in a day. We need to go through the transition. I think the transition will probably go from, you know, brown to blue to green, and every molecule that we can save and we can substitute is, you know, is a molecule greener and better for the environment. And I think what's happening is, for example, you know, we just financed our first new buildings, which are not dual fuel capable, but they're some chemical tankers, but they're probably the most efficient chemical tanker there is in the world, because they have battery packs, they have you know, plugs for cold ironing when they go to port, etc., etc. But this is, and they're expensive, of course, but this is happening because the charterers are actually looking for such tonnage, and because they're smaller ships, they're going to be operating mostly in European waters, and that means 100% ETS rather than 50 or less. So we're happy to see that people are investing in new technologies, and obviously we are also happy to support it. And I don't want to monopolize, but I think the discussion could also evolve around fuels and, where you're going to get your ammonia or your methanol, which is, I'm happy to talk about it, but perhaps I will let my predecessor say a few words first.
And thanks, Harris. What about carbon capture? Martin Stopford mentioned this morning the efficiency of a fossil fuel-driven two-stroke engine was going to be hard to beat, and that carbon capture was a promising technology potentially. I get the sense from a lot of people I've spoken to and from our conversations before this event that it's not really on your radar yet. Is that correct? Carbon capture probably less relevant for you if you're going to fully ammonia fueled ships.
Yes, no, our view is that carbon capture is not suitable for intercontinental ocean-going large car carriers, and the world would be better off investing in land-based carbon capture infrastructure. That's what's required for blue ammonia, which we think is a promising transition fuel. So that's where we'd like to see the carbon capture investment take place. We think it's more scalable, more efficient.
Can only echo what Lise said. It's same view on our side. It's requiring a lot of energy, and I understand what Martin says, and he's completely right. But at the end of the day, it's not only the energy you consume, but it's also obviously the CO2 which you have to transport. I'd rather have containers with cargo paying for this on board of our ships. It's something which should be done on shore, and there's no doubt about it. But we are aware of some concepts in smaller niche feeder trades where it does make sense actually, because you're basically every day in a port. So then there is actually some benefits to it, as long as these ports are not really electrified and battery technology is not there, which is, as a bridge technology does make sense.
Yeah, okay. Harris, any thoughts on carbon capture?
Well, not really from a technical point of view. There's a few companies already out there offering solutions, mostly for smaller ships. But whereas it used to be only one, now there's 3 or 4 or maybe more companies, and not only in Europe, but also in the US. Actually, I was in Davos last week and met coincidentally a gentleman from a company called Carbon Capture in the US, which, they're doing exactly that thing. So it's not just one. I mean, there's multiple solutions. So I'm sure that technology, sooner or later, will find a way to solve the capture issue and the storage and recycling of it. So without going into too many technical details. So I think that's going to be part of the solution, because it will work in tandem with other solutions. For example, when it comes to methanol, methanol is, okay, now if it's green, then it's sort of neutral. But if it's not green, and there's a lot of ships today, not a lot, but there's about 50 or perhaps a little bit less ships that can burn methanol. This is not green methanol, it's sort of brown methanol. And therefore, you do emit a little bit less, but still you do emit carbon. So maybe that works in combination. So carbon capture with methanol is a solution, could be a solution. But there's no way in my mind that we're not going to move towards a greener transportation. Last week or a few weeks ago at COP22 in Dubai, the world decided to decarbonize, basically. I mean, the direction is pretty clear. There was a decision to triple the renewables capacity and the nuclear capacity, and that around the world, and it's going to happen. So the question is, how do you then move and transition from electrons to molecules? So from green electrons, which are produced when you have renewable electricity, you need to store these electrons somehow. And one of the most efficient ways, I suppose, is hydrogen production, renewable hydrogen production, and then the derivatives, which is green methanol or green ammonia. So I think for owners, the question is, where are these going to be? Where are the locations going to be where you're going to have sufficient production capacity of these green fuels? And and from my perspective, I would actually invest in technologies that are either help you produce or, in fact, are the production facilities themselves for the green fuels, because we need it as an industry, and I think it's the only path forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. It's about refitting the shipping industry or retrofitting the shipping industry for the future, isn't it? Less about the individual ship, more about the entire supply of fuels. I've heard a senior banker say that the future of shipping is going to be about more than just the ship. Will these decisions be driven not by individual ship owners anymore, but by others in the value chain? You talked about COSEV, you know, and your proximity to your clients, I think, as your end users, makes a big difference to your ability to invest in future low to zero carbon shipping. Is there a sense that the industry is going to change, as Martin might be suggesting today, and that we might see some accelerated refitting or retrofitting, not just of the ships themselves, but of, you know, contracts, for example, and how the industry works? I mean, you're in a specialist trade.
Well, our strategy is very clear. It has decarbonisation at the core, and we believe that that is how we, as a small car carrier, can differentiate ourselves and offer our customers the option to ship in a lower carbon manner. But I think it's clear that demand leads supply. If there is a demand for lower carbon transportation, supply will follow. But there is always the question of who is going to pay. How are you going to divvy up the additional cost? And I continue to think that the EU ETS creates the stick, but there should also be a carrot. And I think contract for difference has great potential if some of the ETS revenues are recycled into covering the additional cost, because our customers, which are largely car manufacturers, are also margin conscious. So something has to give to accelerate the energy transition.
Now, I think that, you know, this discussion about what's their first chicken and egg, fuel or ships, I think that's a thing of the past. The ships have been ordered. There are more than 150 methanol ships in the books now. Ammonia projects are being worked on. So I think it's obvious to everyone that these ships will hit the water, and the fuel producers are starting to adapt to it. As I said before, we have been procuring green methanol. Others have as well. Lines in Europe have done that, significant amounts, and the demand is created and the fuel is supplied. It is expensive, though we talked about that before. But yes, it does, to your question, it does change a bit of the relationships and the structures and the contracts which are in place. When we initially looked at the methanol ships, it was clear that the charterer alone wouldn't be enough to, you know, commit, and he couldn't really commit to that fuel and these ships for a very long time. And so we actually went beyond our usual relationship and our usual discussions which we have with the charterers and brought the cargo owners. And in our case, for the first two ships, it was Elkem, which is the global market leader for silicone products based in Norway. And Elkem then themselves handed out a 15-year COA, which is obviously a game changer for the industry. But on the basis of these initiatives, you can order ships and you can commit to fuels and stuff. But that's what it's needed. But there is more and more, as I said before, shippers and cargo owners who are willing to do that. And that's definitely the way forward in our thinking.
Well, I'm going to focus again on the availability of fuel. Today, only 0.1% of hydrogen is green. 0.1%. That's clearly not enough to do much in terms of decarbonization, let alone when we start building, you know, hundreds or thousands of ships that will require renewable fuels. So we need to invest more in electrolyzers. We need to invest more in production capabilities, and some areas in this world are going faster than others. Europe needs to speed up. Only 7% of the projects, the hydrogen sort of production projects, get to final investment decision, which is, you know, very little. So we need to make sure that we speed up, and the governments need to make sure that these funds that they have to decarbonize, they get dispersed. That's very important. So I think I would focus on that, and once there is sufficient production of clean fuels, then it's going to be much easier for the industry to follow suit and decarbonize.
Okay, great. So last question. Sail-powered shipping, power of the wind. Yes, no?
We have looked at this. I'm not a technical specialist, but our technical people say that the stability coefficient for car carriers makes it very difficult to make wind power a realistic source.
Christian?
It's not enough space on board of container ships, unfortunately, for that. I like the power of wind a lot, as I said myself, but the reality is that the systems which have been installed so far, if you look at the track record, and we looked at a few, the Stena ferries and others, that's a bit disappointing, to be honest, if you look at what the savings are and which routes you need to take or when actually you can use the system. I think it's with many technologies, we need more testing on this and more investment. As I said before, container ships are not ideal, but hopefully it will work out on others. It definitely makes sense to look at it.
Okay, great. Harris?
No
Thoughts
particular
on wind?
view. I mean, they look good.
Yeah, they look great, don't they?
And,
some of them.
And it's good for cruise ships, actually. There's a few cruise ships that
Very nice
sailing
French
cruise ships.
project coming up.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's all back to where it all started, you know, sail ships.
With the
Going back to
Greeks,
the
huh?
18th century.
Great. Well, look, thank you very much, the panel. Thank you for listening. Lise, Christian, Harris, thanks a lot. Thank you, Kevin.